It's a very short break. I know. So I'm going to talk about the next piece, Schubert's D365, Opus 9, number 2. It's from the 36 original dance. So I'm going to talk about the harmony first. So as you can see, there are two sections, and the first section, it's very straightforward. It established the key of A flat major. And then in the B section here, you can see that it's more complicated than the A section. So Schubert maneuvers his way back to A flat major in a very interesting way. Where you can see I use a red square. That's where he uses the common chord in between two different keys. So started off from the dominant 7th chord of the A flat minor. So the A flat minor, the first chord of the A flat minor is actually the 3rd chord of the E major. So this is how he modulates to E major. And then here is the A flat, it's the augmented 4th, German augmented chord of the A flat major. And this is also the dominant 7th chord, E major, E dominant 7th chord. Back to A flat major. All right, and then the next one. So since it's a very short piece, so the form, I'm going to talk about the form, rhythm, and texture. So the form, as you can see, it's a binary form as well. So both sections are repeated, but in the B section, it's different from the Mozart. It didn't go back to the A section. And the rhythm, as you can see, the right hand is a consistent 8th notes, while the left hand is maintains a steady quarter beat. Great. So it shows consistency and simplicity because it's throughout the whole piece. And then the texture overall. It's homophonic. The right hand is the melody, and the left hand contains the accompaniment. And the melody part here, the places I circled is where the melody is. So the melody is intertwined between the accompaniment and the melody, and it has a scale-like motion. And then here it's the appoggiatura. And then another appoggiatura. So you can see that this appoggiatura actually, the motif keeps repeating throughout the whole piece. The next page. So all the circle part is all the appoggiatura motif that occurs. So. B section. Okay, and the arrangement. So now I'm going to analyze the Cicero's arrangement on Schubert's piece. So here you can see the form. So it contains an 8-bar introduction, and then the A section contains 24 bars, and the B section is where the solo part also contains 24 bars, and then it's the return of the A section. And then later on, it's he puts the Schubert original piece at the very end that contains 32 bars. And the harmony, it's also a blues progression. So C7, F7, C7, G7, F7, and C7 chord. This is a blues progression. And then in Cicero's arrangement, he uses a common tritone substitution. So what is a tritone substitution? So instead of using the original dominant G dominant 7 chord back to 1, he uses a tritone apart from the G dominant 7, which is the D flat dominant 7 chord, and going back to the 1 chord. And the reason that you can use that is because there are 2 common tones between G dominant 7 and so it's the third and 7th that is common between these 2 chords. Here is the rhythm part. So Cicero also maintained the original consistent 8th note melody in his arrangement. However, instead of using the original 3/4 time signature, he turns it into 4/4. And he uses a lot of syncopation as well, both in the right hand and left hand, as you can see from the example. So I'm just going to play a little bit of it. You can see that the right hand has this tie between bars, and then the left hand has the offbeat thing. Okay. Next one. So in this piece, the 8th note is not played in a swinging 8th note. However, it's a even 8th note, and the reason it's because it will create a rock style. So in Dan Harrow's book, it says that the 8th notes in rock style or Latin style are generally played as even 8th notes. So if you play it in a swinging 8th note, it will become a different style. So it's going to be like, it's very different. So because this is a rock tune, so it's even 8th note. Next one. So here in his arrangement, he also uses a lot of offbeat comping, and he combined it with a downbeat bass note here. So here is one of the examples. So here, as I mentioned before, he uses this technique, the extensive left hand reinforcement. So here's one of the examples in this piece. And then the texture. So the bass and the drums were added after the introduction, and it provides a more energetic feel. And then at the end, when Cicero returns to the original melody, the string sections were added. But today we're not going to play with the string section because the string actually just creates a warmer texture, but the string just plays the same melody, just like the piano part. And then the melody. So what is the similarity between Cicero's melody and the Schubert's original piece? It's the interval of 6. Here you can see where I circled. And then it's a scale like down motion, just like the original piece. Cicero arranged it in a different key. And then next one. So he uses a lot of chromaticism as well. So here's one of the examples. Wheelock's Watermelon Man in his solo when it's sitting on the F dominant 7 chord. So the comparison between the original piece and the arrangement is the melody. As you can see, both the melody are on the top in both versions. And then in Cicero's arrangement is, so they're both on the top voicing. And then the harmony, it's both using 1/4 and 5 chord, so it's the main chord. And then accompaniment in Schubert's piece, there's this downbeat bass note with a two-note voicing at the top. And then in Cicero's arrangement, it's also using the downbeat bass note with a 2 or 3 note voicing on the top. So these are the similarities. Okay, so this is the example that shows the interval of 6, where I use the red circle to point it out. And then the difference. So later on over here, the style is totally different. It's Schubert's original piece, it's a waltz, and then Cicero turned it into a rock style. And then the melody part, at the end, Cicero added a string section, and then the rhythm is one of the most important things. So he uses a lot of syncopation and accents that creates a totally different feel. So now you can, let me play the original Schubert piece first. Wheelock and bass player Cicero. talk about the last piece, which is Chopin's Prelude in C minor, Opus 28, number 20. So in this prelude, you can see that Chopin uses chord progression to support his melody. So he's using all these chords, and then the melody is on the top voice. And one of the characteristics of this piece is that, as you can see, the third beat of each measure, it contains the dotted rhythm, and then the first two measures you see there are appoggiaturas that is in two voicings, and then the second measure, so it resolves to the tonic, and then in the third measure here, the appoggiatura only exists in one voicing. And then in the fourth measure, it's also the same. Okay. And in measure 5, it's different from the previous appoggiatura. It's a double appoggiatura. A double appoggiatura means the two notes preceding the target note, one above, one below. So one above and then one below. So this is actually also similar to the jazz enclosure. And in measure 6, Chopin didn't use the appoggiatura. However, he uses the passing chord at the end of the third beat. And then in measure 8 here, although the melody is the same as measure 2, so here is measure 8. So here Mozart uses the dominant 7th chord, and going back to the C minor chord. However, in measure 2, how he's using different chords to create a different color and feeling. And the next one. So the rhythm, as you can see, it's mostly steady quarter notes with the third beat of the dotted 8th 16-note rhythm in the right hand. And the form, it's very short. It's only 13 measures long. And you can also divide that into 3 sections, A, B, B, which with each section being a 4 measure long. And then the melody is on the top of the chord progression. And as you can hear, the texture is it's chord-like because all voicings are moving together. Okay. And here's the analysis of Cicero's arrangement. So basically, the harmony, Cicero is following all the Chopin's chord progression. However, he would sometimes omit a few chords to create space in the left hand because of the fast changing pace of the harmony in Chopin's original piece. So here is one of the examples that you can see that the left hand contains many rests. And then the next one is the rhythm. So in Cicero's arrangement, he adds 16 notes and triplets into the original melody. Okay. And then the next one, offbeat comping. So like I mentioned before, he uses a lot of offbeat comping in his left hand. So here's one of the examples. is anticipation. So as you can see, Chopin's original piece, all the melody is mostly on the downbeat, but here he make it, he anticipate a 16 note early. So this part, it should be occurring at the next bar on the downbeat. However, he anticipated 16 note. Okay, and then he uses extensive left hand reinforcement, the same thing that you can see on the previous two pieces. So here is one of the example. The form. So here in this piece, Cicero put the original piece at the very beginning, so it's the Chopin's original piece. So it contains 12 measures. He omits the last measure of Chopin's original piece, and then it's 4 bars drum introduction, and then later on it's the arrangement of the original piece. It's 12 measures. And then there are 2 measures solo break, and then it's the solo improvisation part that contains 48 measures, which is 4 choruses, and then later on is the return of the arrangement. And then the texture. So Cicero adds symbols to every beat of the original prelude. And then the bass is also added, and it's doubling the left-hand bass line of the piano. So here the drums and bass are playing a supporting role in this arrangement, and the drum provides a rhythmic punctuation while the bass emphasizes the root of each chord change. And the melody. So as I pointed out previously, Cicero adds 16 notes and triplets into the original melody, and the left-hand part sometimes plays a counter melody. So here, for example, so here the left hand is playing a third part, and then his left hand, he also uses a contrary motion. Okay, and sometimes the left hand is playing the same, just like the right hand. Okay. And then chromaticism. So in his improvisation, the same thing, he uses chromatic lines to connect the target note. So you can see where I circled, these are the original melody. So these are all the original melody hidden in between all these fast 16 note passages. So here's one other example. And then he would also use broken chords in his solo. And then the similarity between the original classical piece and the arrangement. So, as I mentioned before, Cicero follows Chopin's chord. So there is not much different. He didn't really alter the chord progression. The difference is that he inserts 16 notes and triplets, and he also uses delay and anticipation of the rhythm. Here you can see the example. So the A flat, it's delayed. This is the anticipation that I talked about. So now let me play the original Chopin piece first. And then you'll also later hear that the original piece, it's largo and it's very slow. However, in Cicero's recording, he played it rather fast. thank you for my drummer and my bass player.
Right on.
Okay, so I'm going to talk about the last bit of, so it's the conclusion. Okay, so after hearing all these pieces, you can see I'm going to talk about the characteristics of these three classical pieces that can be transformed into jazz. So first, it's the simplicity of the harmony. Like I had previously analyzed Mozart, Schubert, and Chopin, they all use simple chord progression. It's most in Mozart, especially in Mozart and Schubert. It mainly includes 1, 4, and 5 chord, and that can be easily translate into a blues progression. And then it's a 1-6-2-5 turnaround that I found very interesting in Mozart's piece. As you can see, so 1-6-2-5, it's one of a very common turnaround in jazz. I Got Rhythm is one of the very important piece that many jazz standard uses this chord progression as a contrafact. So this is the chord progression of I Got Rhythm. So you can see the 1-6-2-5 at the end. And here in Mozart piece, he also uses 1-6-2-5. So. So it's really interesting to see the similarity. And then the next one, the rhythm. So as you can see, all these three pieces, the rhythm are rather simple, straightforward, and consistent. As you can see in Mozart's K265, he uses consistent quarter note. And then in Schubert piece, he uses consistent eighth note rhythm in the right hand. And then in Chopin's piece, he uses consistent quarter note rhythm. Okay. And then the form, as you can see from these three pieces, they're all repetitive. So Mozart is a rounded binary form, and Schubert is also a binary form. And Chopin, although it's a little different, however, you can see the B section repeats twice, so you can also see it as a two-part form. And the next one. And then now I'm going to talk about Cicero's arranging strategies. So chromaticism, that you can see how he connects the notes together by using chromatic lines to reach the target note. And then rhythm, he uses syncopation, anticipation, delayed attack, and left hand offbeat comping and the extensive reinforcement of the left hand. These are all shown in these three arrangements. And he would also quote folk songs and jazz tunes in his solo, and it shows how different songs can be combined in a seamless way. And as you can see from Mozart and the Schubert arrangement, he uses the blues chord progression. So this is one of these are his arranging strategy. And then thank you all for coming, and I hope you enjoyed my presentation.